As of recording this video, XDefiant releases tomorrow, and I'm actually pretty excited. I wasn't able to play during the most recent open beta, but when I got the chance to play it last summer, I was pleasantly surprised. The game generally felt way better than I expected, and aside from some very fixable issues like clunky feeling animations, janky hit detection, and the game freezing on me a couple times, I was pretty impressed. And now that it's a year later, I'd still pretty much feel the same way. A lot of news and info has been coming out recently leading up to the game's launch, and just a couple days ago, we finally got a formal announcement from the devs of XDefiant that we were all kind of expecting, saying that the game will have no skill-based matchmaking. For a game that's trying to appeal to people who dislike the current direction of COD, that sounds great, but I don't think it'll work out exactly how they're expecting, and I hope you'll stick around and hear me out. But before I talk about why I don't think it'll work as planned, let me give a very simplistic overview of how SBMM generally works. Skill-based matchmaking is essentially a two-step process. In the first step, you have to separate a small subsection of the player base that falls within a certain criteria. In the case of SBMM, that criteria would generally be skill or player's kill-death ratio. If you fall within a certain range, let's say a kill-death ratio between 1 and 1.1, you get separated from the rest of the group. After that, you move on to the second step, which is what I like to think of as the shotgun method. You're basically randomly selecting from that smaller group of people who are separated from the main player base. Essentially, you fire a shotgun into that group, and whoever the pellets fortunately, or maybe unfortunately land on, that's who's in your match. Hopefully, you're all on board so far and think that's a fair enough, if not a little oversimplified description of what SBMM is generally doing. Now, let's talk about how a game like XDefiant, which won't have SBMM, will end up working. Based on how I described before, you'd be correct if you said that only Step 2 would be happening. Take the entire player base and shotgun method to fill out the lobbies without Step 1 happening. However, even without the first step of SBMM being in XDefiant, I'd argue that it would still be happening, just not within the game itself. This will lead to the game feeling like SBMM is there, even if it actually isn't. Now before you start commenting and saying that I'm crazy, let me explain. XDefiant, no matter how you look at it, is a very niche game. Everything, ranging from the game's marketing to the discussion surrounding the game, makes it very clear that it's targeting disgruntled, higher skilled Call of Duty players, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because of the more focused marketing effort, and the game's discussion revolving around things that only higher skilled players generally care about, I don't think the game will have as broad of a reach compared to if it was trying to target a more general audience. And it's here that I think Step 1 of SBMM is happening for XDefiant. My current prediction is that XDefiant will have a similar feeling of sweatiness as a typical Call of Duty beta, and here's why. Generally speaking, players who tend to be more skilled and who are on the sweatier end of the player base are the ones playing most Call of Duty betas, and I think there's a fairly significant overlap in the skill level between them and those who will leave COD to go to XDefiant, whether it be permanently or temporarily. Essentially what I'm saying is that I think the game's narrow marketing will artificially cause Step 1 of SBMM to happen, and turn that subsection of people who are leaving COD for XDefiant into the main majority of its own player base. This will end up making XDefiant's player base artificially skewed to be more skilled and sweaty than what I think people are expecting. This might sound like a bad thing, but the game being free to play is definitely going to help. The real question though is how much. A game being free to play always comes with its own sets of benefits and problems. One of the benefits of being free to play is that it'll bring in casual players because that's just what free games do. Since you don't have a barrier of money in the way, a lot more people will be willing to give the game a try. So if being free will bring in casual players, then what's the problem? Well, there's a massive issue that tons of free-to-play games suffer from, and that's player retention. Since you don't have to pay, you don't feel any obligation to stick around, especially when you still have money to spend on another game, or tons of other free games to try. If you don't believe me, let's take a look at one of the most popular free-to-play games that's been out for quite a while, called Warframe. Even though the game's in a different genre, it should hopefully still get the point across. When you scroll through Warframe's achievements, you can see that some of the most simple and easy to complete ones have been done by a laughably low number of people. And that's not due to the game being poor quality or its player base being bad or toxic. The game's been actively supported for around 10 years now, and has a fairly sizable and active player base between console and PC, who are actually very kind and helpful to new players. Warframe's players do a great job at trying to keep new people around and make sure they make it far enough to see how solid the game actually is, and I speak from experience. It's actually how I met Jake, who you guys may know from the channel. Despite all this, an achievement like Play for 10 hours was only earned by 14% of players on Xbox. Then there's multiple very easy achievements that require you to max level any one of the weapons within a certain weapon category, yet the overwhelming majority of them are considered rare achievements, which means that less than 10% of people have earned them. And to really drive it home, the first achievement everyone should get, which only needs you to level up one of the playable characters to level 2, has only been earned by 56% of people, and that should only take 10 to 15 minutes max. That's really bad, and that's the biggest problem that comes with being a free-to-play game. But anyway, Warframe tangent aside, I hope XDefiant is able to bring in and retain casual players to offset the inherently sweatier player base that's being targeted by the game's marketing. This would need to happen in order to make sure there's a fairly equal mix of casual and sweaty players, so that having no SBMM will work how people expect it to. It's just that the inherent nature of free-to-play games makes this very difficult. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying this because I want XDefiant to fail. It's quite the opposite, actually. Some competition to the arcade shooter genre is a welcome thing, but I just think XDefiant has a much longer and more challenging uphill battle simply due to the very nature of the game itself being very niche, free-to-play, and having a very focused marketing effort directed towards higher skilled players. But that's pretty much it for this video. I do hope this game does well, and I'll definitely give it a try when it launches, but I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you think my prediction and concerns for XDefiant are valid, and do you have any concerns of your own going into the game's launch? I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say in the comments, but with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.